find Pierce Allen at where do we find you, Pierce?
Uh, the
Your
Pierce
user, what's
E.
your
Allen.
username, bro? Come
Yes, the
on.
Pierce. I thought you already had it. I thought you were looking. My bad.
No,
It's
I can't
the
think of it right now.
no.
It's off
It's
the top of my head.
it's the Pierce E. Allen
Okay.
on X.
Okay. Bro was like, no, don't find me. He just like stared at me. Like, no.
That's
Um,
No spotlight.
you were
No attention.
and this is Mark. Mark Brandt, a friend of the show. We worked together on offsides for a good, I guess, 2 years or so, and then we kind of flipped the chapter from offsides. But Mark and I have still been in contact. We do the fantasy league together. That we've
Do I
done.
really do it though? I mean, that's
Yeah,
questionable.
you got cooked this year, bro. That was bad. I was talking to Alec and Ayush about it, and I was like, so I'm not gonna lie, I think I cooked your team because we did a trade on draft. It was like Mahomes. What was it? It was I was like, dude, I'll give you Mahomes. You give me Brees Hall, a first round draft pick,
No, it was T Law. I think it was T Law.
and T-Law
Did
because
I
I
give
got
up
Brees.
Brees Hall in there?
Yeah, you gave me Brees, T-Law, and a first rounder. So, and the first rounder ended up being Kincaid. But I was like, I feel like I told them afterwards, like a year later, because you like tanked almost. You tanked at the end, and you got the first round, the first
Oh, yeah.
overall for the next year. And I told them, I think I just like Carolina Panthered them because, or him because it felt like the Bryce Young trade, and then they just tanked the entire team, and then they ended up getting the first round draft pick, but our early first, and I was like, okay, that was good. That set me up for the championship run this year. So thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
And
You're welcome.
and that's why I texted him a couple weeks ago. I was like, bro, you should join the show because he helped me win a championship. So I was like, okay, I owe this to him.
Yeah. It's only
But anyways, Mark. So Mark's gonna hopefully join the show consistently as a co-host with us. But I'm gonna give you the floor really quick, Mark. Tell the listeners who you are, why you're here, and kind of what your goal is in the sports industry.
Yeah, thank you, Dillon. So, like you said, my name is Mark Brandt. You can find me on Twitter at Mark Brandt _, because apparently there's a lot of Mark Brandts out there. I don't know what the deal is. But yeah, I've been covering all sports really. I did sports TV in college at William Patterson University, great institution. It's where Kevin Burkhardt went, actually. Little
Oh,
fun
really?
fact. Yeah. So yeah, I did that. And my love for sports continued, or it started way before that. Been really into the NFL draft since high school, and my goal ultimately, like, I would love to be talking to Daniel Jeremiah one day at the NFL scouting combine.
Mhm.
That's a dream right there for me.
Sweet. Yeah, and uh, yeah, we love to have you on, Mark. I think this is gonna further enhance the quality of this podcast and the overall direction of the show. Ayush isn't going to be on with us today, uh, but another friend of the show, Alec, who we've mentioned a couple times. We're trying to see if we can get him on uh, a little bit as well, because he's a great friend of the show. He knows ball, and he actually is. He works for the Steelers in their social department. And we were talking about it before. Pierce, I think you had joined on afterwards, but there's a big DK Metcalf swap that's circulating right now. Um, Here, actually, let's see if I can share. I can find it and share this screen. Okay, 1 second. Where is it? And it's getting a lot of clicks, and it's pretty cool. And as per usual, it's an elite swap. Okay,
Oh,
let's share
yeah.
the screen.
Like we were saying, I have no idea how he does it, because
Doesn't
I've
know.
done graphic design for a little bit, but I can't do what he does.
That just looks beautiful. I'd say
Yeah,
where before.
excuse aside with the comments, but yeah, that's from Alec, our buddy. He's a beast with the swaps, so that's pretty awesome. Uh, okay, so
It's a shame that
let's
thing didn't cost $30 million.
yeah. But yeah, he made that swap. He's an elite elite what's the word? I don't know. Designer. He's an elite
Graphic designer,
designer.
yeah.
So yeah, hopefully we'll get him on a little bit as well. But yeah, so not that won't be this week though. But okay, so today we're going to be talking about the NFL free agency. There's a lot to talk about, so uh, we'll probably dive straight into that here in just a second. But we'll talk about that. We're going to talk about a little bit of how that kind of impacts the trajectory of what the NFL draft is going to be like this year. And Mark, you mentioned it earlier, kind of the main goal with the free agency is to set your team up so you're not having to basically window dress your board on draft day, right? You want to be able to get the right pieces in play so that you don't sit there and you're like, oh, I need a wide receiver. I need it really bad and I'm willing to reach for it. You don't want to be in that position. You want to be able to go draft guys that are, at the top of your board or near the top of your board so that you can add as much talent as you can. But we're going to talk about that here in just a second. We're going to run the introduction and we'll be right back on that. All right. So yeah, a lot to talk about with the free agency. We did discuss a little bit before, though. This was an interesting free agency because they're actually not going to lie, it wasn't quite as polarizing, I'd say. It was a little bit more like there wasn't as many Milton William type guys as there normally is. You know, the up and coming, the middle, mid 20s types of guys that are ascending. And there were a lot of vets that had been moved, and there's still a lot of vets that have yet to be moved. And when I say that, I'm meaning kind of your late 20s, early 30s type guys. You know, the Keenan Allen's still out there. Cooper Cup is still out there. He just got released by the Rams not too long ago. I think it was
Yesterday, I believe, late
yesterday.
yesterday.
And there's still a lot of those types of guys. Stephon Diggs is still out there. Von Miller is out there. And yeah, there's a number of guys that can be key contributors next year, but just haven't found their home yet. So, but let's kickstart this with uh, one that maybe has a little bit more of a deeper underlying topic. But Saquon Barkley signed a big time deal about a day or two before free agency kicked off, and it was a I want to say a 2-year, $41 million deal uh, to extend onto I think whenever he signed that contract with Philly originally last year, it was 2 years as well, right? So I think he has another 3 years left in Philly, if I'm not mistaken. But that's a lot of money. 20, basically almost $21 million going to a running back. That is very unheard of. And something I didn't think that we were going. I thought we were still a couple years away from uh, really getting to those types of deals. I know how pivotal Saquon Barkley is to not just what the Eagles just did in winning the Super Bowl, but in the NFL in general. But I'm gonna open the floor up to you guys, Mark. Since this is your first episode with us, I'll let you kick off. But what is your thoughts on the Saquon deal, and do you think that it has kind of more of a uh, uh, a future towards how it can change the running back position both financially and how teams treat that position.
Yeah, I mean, definitely for sure. We saw how valuable he was during the season, and obviously in the playoff run. Didn't do a crazy amount in the Super Bowl, but they wouldn't have been there if it wasn't for his contributions on the field. But like, I'm looking at this contract right now, and the base salary is not super high. It's like a base salary of around. It gets up to like 1.4 million at the end of the contract in 2028. So they structured this contract definitely to help save themselves some cap room. Because like it's not an astronomical cap hit. It's a good contract for the Eagles ultimately, Guaranteed money was 36 million. So I don't hate it. Obviously there's been a lot of talk in recent years with running backs not being as valued, but now with defenses going more towards the more common too high look, it opens offenses up to running the ball more. So I think this is going to age well. I really do.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
if anyone's gonna get it, it's Saquon, right? So
Yeah, and he deserves it
it makes
100%.
sense. Yeah. All right, Pierce. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean it's well deserved. I mean the guy was 50 or like less than that from breaking the all-time rushing record this year,
Yeah.
set by Eric Dickerson. But I mean it's well deserved. Like you can't if you want to lock him up long term and you want to make sure that he stays in Philly for the rest of his career, that's what you do.
Yeah.
And he's worth every penny. Uh, there are some question marks, of course, with me, not just being a Cowboy fan, but just like, the history of his ankle injuries and his knee injury. Like, will that ever come back into play? Or with the addition of A.J. Dillon or and then bringing him in, I feel like that might actually
Yeah.
lean back on the amount of touches that Saquon's going to get in the future so they can
Kind of like
preserve him for
protecting your
those 3 years.
asset, kind of.
Mhm.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Which I think is a phenomenal move.
Hmm.
Them locking up Barkley long term before, of course, somebody else resets the market again. Because I feel like didn't Jonathan Taylor like get a he was paid but wasn't paid
Yeah.
big, or is it
Uh,
a
he just
franchise
got an
tag?
extension last offseason, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I
Okay,
remember he was
It was
holding
some.
out
It
for a
was.
little bit.
It was an interesting
yeah, because
number.
I don't think there's any other like it's him and then when healthy Christian McCaffrey, or in terms of two
Yeah.
of the best running backs in the league right
Yeah.
now.
Well, and
So,
Bijan and Jameer are going to be
oh,
due for one
that
probably at
is
the end of
true.
this next year. I would
That is true.
imagine that they're going to start getting those talks. At the very least, those
Hmm.
conversations are going to get going, and I would imagine at least one of those guys are going to start to land that contract by the end of next year, next offseason.
Yeah,
Which
and
goes back to
James.
the point of like, I think it's just a great move by Philly because
Yeah.
with
Yeah,
Bijan
Sure.
and Gent or not Gent, Gibbs possibly getting extensions within the next year or two, reset the market now when he's a year into his deal, and you don't
Yeah.
have to deal with the fact that okay, Bijan and Gibbs have just gotten 25 plus or 20, 21, 22 million per year.
Yeah.
Now we got to get Barkley, and Barkley is looking at that going like, dude, I'm better than those dudes. Why am I not getting like 23 plus?
Hmm.
Get it to him now,
Yeah.
which
Jerry
helps
could
them.
never.
No,
Jerry
never,
Jones would
never. He'll
crap
sit
the
here.
hell
He's
out of
sitting
that.
there doing this. He's just like,
Yeah.
wait, oh wait, we're supposed to sign somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think James Cook too is looking for an extension. I think he's
Yeah.
That
ballparking
too,
at
yeah.
around 15 mil per. So
And
that
I
might
heard,
be
yeah, I heard some rumors that he was not going to cheap out on it, that he was going to go all in on these contract talks. And if you're running back, it's kind of reasonable because
Mhm.
you might not get another contract after this.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah,
these guys are so he could be out of the out of the league in 4 years. They're so
Yeah,
fragile at the
the
running back
shelf
position.
life is not
Zeke
stable.
Yeah,
is, yeah,
and not to mention the kind of the overarching conversation here is running backs in general, the value of them, because there's been a lot of controversy as to, what do we pay these types of guys? Where do we draft these types of guys? How do we value these types of guys? Like, obviously it's my team, but last year the Cowboys obviously were very much bought into that. And they end up going with Rico Dowdle, an undrafted free agent, had been injured the majority of his career. He actually had a good year, so there's nothing wrong on him, and he earned a $3 million contract with the Panthers up to 6 mil. But I think that's a interesting, type of topic is you have one team that's like, we're not even going to pay a running back. That was the Cowboys last year.
hmm
And now you have a team that's like, oh, we'll pay him $20 million, and for good measure, we're going to go pay another what, 4 million on AJ Dillon.
hmm
So there's clearly a lot of kind of discourse there, and kind of a difference of opinion between the two. But I definitely find that really interesting for Saquon and for the Eagles, but it's just another. I think Howie Roseman's the best in the business at the GM position,
Hmm.
and a lot of people know that. But if you really look at what he does, I've talked about it before. Like after they won the Super Bowl, I was like, man, look at how he builds the trenches, and he during draft day, he's not trying to just go all in on um, one particular position of need. He knows how to distribute and allot his draft capital the right way, and he's also not afraid to double dip, which he showed with DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell. He follows all of the things that's like these are. It's almost like the Ten Commandments of being a GM. It feels like he's someone that almost writes those rules, and this is another testament to that. Where and I'm not even talking about the money aspect, but what you brought up, Pierce. He got ahead of it, and at the tail end of this, I think this is going to look like a pretty good deal here in about
Oh,
a year
100%.
because after, like I said, I would imagine Bajan or Jameer Gibbs signs their contract next offseason to get ahead of it because that'll be at the end of their third year. And that's when you start talking about talking about these deals. And I would imagine at least one of those guys are going to get a deal here soon. It's going to be in that ballpark too. So, okay, so let's flip the page to, I guess let's talk about the quarterbacks right now. So, uh, Geno Smith got shipped off to Las Vegas, reunites with Pete Carroll, um, and the Raiders sent off a third round draft pick for him. And then the uh, domino that fell about 24 hours later, if my clock is correct, Sam Darnold heads over to Seattle, taking over Geno Smith's place. So kind of an adjacent move there. I guess that's kind of like you know who do you prefer in terms of talent level? I think they're pretty much in the same ballpark. And then the other side of that, and we can talk about that afterwards, but Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, regarding the quarterback market, are still available. A lot of discourse on what's going to happen to those guys. So, Mark, get us started on what your point of view is on how this quarterback market has panned out.
I mean, I feel like it's about what people expected, right? I think we knew coming in to this free agency that the quarterbacks were not at their strongest in terms of who was available. Obviously, Darnold was the talk of the town in terms of just
Yeah.
how well he played in Minnesota under Kevin O'Connell, and I don't think the contract's all that bad for him in Seattle. I think a lot of people were, just kind of ripping it, but ultimately, look, it's a quarterback. They make the whole league go round. You need a
Mhm.
guy who can play, and Darnold proved that he could play. I think he's definitely far away from where he was in New York, and it should
Oh yeah.
age well for the Seahawks, but it all depends on how they build around him. That's the thing, because 3 years, it's not exactly a long leash. Like
Hmm.
I think we saw a lot of 3-year deals in free agency this season. I'm sure a lot of them have outs on them, but it's really going to all depend on how Seattle builds around him. And we know how bad the offensive line was. And that's something Darnold struggled with in Minnesota, especially the interior, which Seattle does not have a very good one.
Hmm.
So it it really depends on what they do in the next coming days in free agency. And, obviously they traded DK and they cut Tyler Lockett. So there's questions there for me. I think Darnold has definitely progressed as a player, but it's still a bit questionable. I'm excited to see how it plays out.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah. He needs people around. He's someone that's very. He's kind of you kind of build a team around him like you. It's hard to build a team around him like the 49ers did, and
Right.
obviously they're decimated right now. But you kind of look at him like a Brock Purdy, where it's like if you put the right pieces around him, and I guess this is true for most quarterbacks, but I think it's significantly more true with him. The minute that you put him on a team that had the best receiver in football, Justin Jefferson, a one of the better second options, and Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, who did miss a lot of the season last year, but one of the best tight ends in football when he's healthy. Aaron Jones. There was a lot of talent there, and obviously the offensive line was pretty banged up, and Darisaw missed a lot of time. But uh, he finally had a team that had a decent structure. He had good coaches too. He actually had a
Yeah.
decent coaching staff, something that he hasn't had a lot of, and you saw the effects of that. But Pierce, what is your thinking uh, on the quarterback market this year?
As Mark said, I mean, it just seems as expected because not all the we're in we're in year 2 or 3 of post Tom Brady officially just walking away from the sport and now sitting and calling games on Fox. I mean, back then, you had guys moving left and right. You had the thoughts of, okay, is Tom coming back? Is he going to go somewhere else? But yeah, like
Yeah,
sa-
that's true. Yeah, the market was
the
wild.
market was the market was crazy because there was thoughts of him going back to New England, the tampering with Miami, of him possibly going to Miami after calling it, retiring the first time.
Yeah,
But yeah, it just this year, Gino getting traded from Seattle to Vegas was kind of surprising to me because I I didn't see that happening. I saw either
yeah,
Vegas sitting at 6 and taking the best player available, or trying to make a move up to at least 3 or 4 and get a Shador or Cam Ward if they were
yeah,
there. But seeing now that they have their quarterback and they have, somewhat of a basis of what their team's going to look like, I still feel like they have a lot they need to address their skill positions in the running back position. Um, but you have your QB, you have your head coach. And yeah, I think it's the safe choice for Pete Carroll, who is probably on a short leash in Vegas, because Vegas fans, I can tell, are just sick of being subpar to just hot garbage every year.
yeah.
Because I don't think they've seen the playoffs since what?
The
I don't
one
remember.
Derek Carr year, right?
Yeah, it
Am I
was like
tripping? Was it the like 2014 or something? No, it would have been sooner than that. It would have been
didn't
the
I thought they?
Bisaccia year that they
Hmm.
made it and they lost to the
Yeah,
Bengals
it
first round.
just yeah, like that.
Right?
It's been quite a
2020,
while. Yeah. Yes.
something like
Well,
Yeah,
that.
wasn't that when
21.
Yeah.
Staley tried to when Staley didn't kick the field goal to tie it and he ended up losing the game, which put the Raiders in?
I
Yeah.
do think so.
Yeah.
Yes, and
No, yeah, that was a tie. Yeah, the Chargers
everyone was
Steelers.
thinking
Yeah. And
the
then
Chargers Raiders, I believe. When the
no,
Chargers Raiders,
no,
it was.
Chargers Steelers were playing, right? And then the Raiders were, if that game ended
I think
in
so.
a win for the Steelers, they would take the Chargers spot.
I
If
thought
it
it
was
was.
something like
I
that.
thought
I
it was.
remember, and then if the Chargers had tied with the Steelers, the Chargers and the Raiders would be in.
I thought it was Raiders Chargers, but I could be wrong.
No,
But
it
yeah,
was
I
Raiders
remember that game.
Chargers.
It was
Yeah,
Raiders
because
Chargers?
me and my
No.
Yeah.
father.
Was it?
Uh, yeah,
Oh
it
wow.
was. I think
Yeah.
I was in this. I think I was in the championship game
That's
against
right.
my
Okay.
father, and I had Jacobs, and I needed him to go nuts, and did something for me. But
Yeah. Okay, so
um,
that was the game where if those two
they're both
teams
in.
tied, then the Steelers would miss.
Yes,
That's right.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay,
they
because
were
I
both
remember
in.
I remember there
Chargers.
was
Yeah,
something with the Steelers because I remember Alec just blowing up my phone. Like the dude was like panicking because
they're gonna
that
take a
was
tie. They're gonna tie. They're gonna tie.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, just back to it though. But like, it makes it a little more clear of where they're trying to go.
Mhm.
For Vegas, they have their QB. They want to get some receiving help, which you could do that in free agency. You can get an older, yes, an older, but a guy that can set the foundation for what your team wants to
Yeah.
be in terms of in terms of your skill positions. And I believe we're going to get to this soon, but I feel like they can draft a certain running back at 6
Yeah.
now to set up just that, to set up the attitude of what that team wants to be. And
Mhm.
knowing Pete Carroll from his history in Seattle,
is Marshawn Lynch.
physical running game
Yeah.
and defensively. Uh, and then to Sam Darnold, I mean he earned every penny of that contract, I believe, because I mean other than flopping in the playoffs, which I mean that kind of happens when it's your first playoff game, but he played very well when he was given the opportunity, especially with McCarthy getting hurt. But yeah, with him in Seattle, there's a lot more question marks. With DK getting shipped to Pittsburgh, Tyler Lockett being cut. Uh, don't they have a new coaching staff there too, or is it still the same coaching staff as
They
last
got
year?
new coaching staff last year. Um,
Okay, it's the same
yeah.
as last year.
They
But yeah,
Well, and they
just
they did
also,
fire they fired Grubb, so
mm,
oh
the offensive coordinator.
yeah,
Kubiak,
yeah,
that's what
just
they have now.
yeah. So and we're just worth noting, if I'm not mistaken, they also cut Noah Fant. I think in general.
I
So it's not
do.
even
Yeah,
like the wide receiver rooms decimated. Like in general,
just all
they
their
need help. Did they
skill
cut Noah?
position.
Maybe they didn't cut Noah Fant, but I guess it doesn't
Well,
matter. He's not.
I thought he was a free agent, but I guess not.
I'm looking at our lad's depth chart, and he's on there. So I could swear I saw he got cut, but right now, right now, their wide receiver two is Marquez Valdez Scantling, and then Jake Bobo. That's
that's their
crazy.
receiving core. Like
Yeah,
they need to address something, and they're probably going to address the receiving room in the draft. Or are
yeah.
they? They're late 20s, right? Or early 20s.
I think they're like
18.
right. Yeah, they're
Oh,
right around there. Um,
18.
yeah,
so
yeah. Just
the good thing is you do have one thing that you do want whenever you get a new quarterback that especially of like Sam Darnold's magnitude is you want a good running game. They have that. So
Kenneth
you
Murray
have
and
a kind of a crutch there. So
Montgomery.
worst comes to worst, every team, I've talked about this before, every team needs to have something where it's like, okay, everything sucks right now, everything uh nothing's going in our favor. What do we do? Here's what we do. And they have, at least they have that right now, where it's like,
hmm
okay, everything sucks. What do? We hand it to Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. So you have something that you can rely on, the fact that uh, you can get 3-4 yards on any given snap, at the very least. But they did add Demarcus Lawrence as well. So
That hurts.
Seahawks are
It,
Straight
it,
hurts.
it's
interesting
so
team.
weird what they're doing in Seattle. Like I like it felt like they were rebuilding when they traded Geno. Then they signed Darnold, which is like, okay, he's still pretty young. But then it's like they signed Demarcus Lawrence, who was a good player by all means. But
For
it's like
14 million on 3 years too. That's a nasty deal.
right,
I was, because me and Pierce were upset about that, but then I was like, dude, look at that contract though. Like
It is one last payday.
If Dallas
It is.
gave him a 3-year, $42 million deal, I would have been like, no, no,
Dude,
because
thank
I
you.
like Demarcus, but I think he has one more like good, about above average type of year left in him. Because even last year before he got hurt, he was starting to, you could like see a little bit
Decline a
of
little bit, yeah.
the decline, because even in years prior he was really good, and I
hmm
hadn't
hmm
totally seen we had seen the decline in pass rush, but as a run stopper, I don't think there's a
Oh,
better
he's
run stopping defensive end in the league,
than
and I
Marcus
mean
Lawrence.
that more. That's beyond bias. I think that dude is
oh
a
yeah,
beast of a run stopper, and there were times where, with how bad the Cowboys' run defense has been, especially with Dan Quinn, where he was like, it
Mhm.
was like he could stop the run, and we could lean on him for that, and it was pivotal for us. But um, their
Oh,
D line looks great, though. I guess we're getting a little bit off topic
Yep.
because the point is quarterbacks, but
yeah.
their D line looks fantastic with Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy, Jerron Reed, who they re-signed, Demarcus Lawrence, Boye Mafe, Jonathan Hankins. That's a killer defensive line. So
Yeah,
that's
they'll
another
stop the run.
good foundational thing. Yeah, they will stop the run for sure. And honestly, I'm not gonna lie. We've talked about how bad the offensive line is for Sam. The fact that they have a good D line is very important, because this offensive line, even if they do start to build on it, um, you're not going to get this to the point where it's above average. Maybe you get it to the point where it's
No.
average through the draft or something, but the good thing is on the opposite side, you have a defensive line that can help this offensive line. They're going to get a lot of gotcha moments on this offensive line. They're going to blow through line of scrimmage consistently, and Sam Darnold in practice is going to be uh, quote unquote sacked because they won't actually sack him. But that's going to help this team build on the front line. So that's
Absolutely.
at least helpful. But
I'm
uh,
just so like I'm so confused on what timeline they see themselves in. That's my
yeah,
Yeah,
biggest
yeah.
question.
exactly. Yeah.
Because
Because like
now, I mean,
February
now
10th?
you have so many holes to fix in the draft too. Because you need probably two offensive linemen, and you need it, Marquez Valdez Scantling is like an okay three. Like that's an
yeah,
okay three. Like
Absolutely.
I wouldn't if he was the three on my team, I wouldn't like throw a fit. Actually, that would be an improvement for the Cowboys because it's
Hmm.
CD
Right.
nothing.
CD and
Yeah.
nothing else.
But he's an okay three, but if I'm the Seahawks, I want to go get a really good two, and I want to probably look at double dip in fifth, fourth round. I want to go see if I can get someone with a high ceiling. So, but and then you need two offensive linemen. You probably need to continue to work on linebacker room. Oh man, I was bringing up the defensive line. I totally forgot about Uchenna Nwosu and Derek Hall too, dude. That defensive line
oh
is
yeah,
crazy.
they're deep.
Um,
They're deep there.
yeah, they are like you can literally have all of your starters go down, and you still have a defensive line that is better than some defensive lines in the NFL.
Yeah, and that's Mike McDonald to a T. That's what he liked to do in
Yeah,
Baltimore, just stack up on guys, and he's doing it here, which is it definitely helps their
Hmm.
defense. So that's good for them.
I'll tell you what. They're not doing it on the offensive side, so it's not apples to
Yeah,
apples. But that's how the Eagles did it this year. They just built up the trenches, built them up nonstop. So honestly, like you can justifiably go into this draft and be like, okay, I don't know how many picks they have, but okay, let's spend six picks on the offensive line and go get a wide receiver, and then you're like, okay,
yeah,
we have the trenches are clear. We have a good running game. We have a good wide receiver. We have our new quarterback, and the rest will sort itself out. And you have a great defensive backfield. So it's just the areas of weakness just suck. They just suck. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
um, okay, so I'll briefly brush over Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson still available. Russ had a meeting with the Browns uh, yesterday, but the Browns were like,
Mhm.
"No, dude, we already never mind. We got Kenny Pickett who just won a Super Bowl, so we're chilling, bro." They sent him
Oh,
packing,
Kenny
and
Pickett.
uh, yeah. So Kenny
I think
Pickett, QB1. Let's
I
go.
think Jerry Judy
Uh,
single handedly told them not to sign Russ.
yeah, yeah.
I that
No,
I would not
actually,
be
yeah.
surprised.
Uh, yeah.
I would not have been surprised.
But I don't know what they're gonna do. We had the
Uh,
conversation though. Pierce and a couple. We've had a couple conversations on Browns
I
quarterbacks.
know Russ is visiting New York, the Giants tomorrow, which
Yeah,
could lead to some different ideas of where New York, if New York
I
visits
don't
with him
think.
and
Yeah, I
says,
just hate
"Hey,
that for the
the Giant fan
Giants. I
base,
don't think if I'm Brian
Giants
Dabble
especially."
and I just got told that my job's on the line, like I will
That's
throw a
true.
fit if you sit there and you're like, okay, here's some washed up 34, 35-year-old quarterback who
Dates a
uh,
supermodel.
is just not going to do that much for you. So, but for the Browns, I think we talked about it before. This is a team where if they I don't think this is an area, or I don't think this is the time to go get a quarterback. I think
Mm-mm.
that they need to continue to build this team up, and you need to finally. It sucks because what you're literally saying is, okay, we still got 2 or 3 more years before we can actually be good. You're kind of penciling that in. There's no off chance that you get a quarterback and they hit, but if you don't go quarterback. But in my opinion, what they need to do right now, build everything else up,
Yes.
and then a year or two from now, maybe a year from now, if they can get themselves right into the middle of that Arch Manning sweepstakes, you can
Yeah.
have a team that's built up, like a semi decent roster, and then you can pencil in a quarterback, and maybe you can finally find the recipe timing up the roster, having a good roster, and having a good young quarterback. Because
Hmm.
clearly Baker Mayfield, whenever he came in, it wasn't the right time, and he had a couple good years for him, but it wasn't the right time for them to actually have start a kickstart something good. It was kind of like a couple off year, like randomly good years, and then he ends up being kicked out the door because he couldn't produce anymore because he didn't have a situation there that was right for him. And then he goes to a situation that was right for him and he succeeds.
And
I think that they need
Tampa.
to build this situation up, and it really sucks because you have, I mean, you have Miles Garrett, who is the best player on the team, the best, in my opinion, top three defensive player in the league with up there with TJ Watt and Micah Parsons and maybe Pat Surtain too. Um but I had to throw that in for you, Mark, since you're a Broncos
Appreciate it.
fan. He's
TJ
definitely
Watt.
up there. He's definitely up there. But
That's
my
funny.
yeah, it sucks because you're literally kind of saying by waiting on quarterbacks that sorry, Miles, like your career is probably not going to end with a ring in Cleveland. But he signed the contract. That's
Yeah,
on him.
that's. I was gonna say that's kind of on him. Like,
Yeah,
obviously,
Yeah,
you can't really sit there and be like, "Oh my god, I would turn down $40 million a year." But
yeah.
money
if he had
talks.
stood his ground with the trade request,
That's how it works.
then
Yeah,
it would have shortened the leash for them to get a quarterback.
But now
yeah.
that he's
And on a
locked
slightly
up,
different note, like I'm curious if Micah Parsons due for a deal soon,
Mm.
hmm
and Pierce, we've had this discussion before. Uh, it, Micah said, and you never know, people will say this and they never mean it, but Micah said he's like, okay, I'll take a couple less dollars to, stay in Dallas. But I wonder if that's maybe him thinking like, oh, so Miles Garrett has been in on this team that has been just bad consistently, and he's eating up a lot of money, and all this type of stuff. And then maybe Micah's like, maybe I'll take the pay cut. And my goal is to win a Super Bowl, so I'll take a couple less bucks. And I don't want to end up like that. So I think it's maybe a good reflection point for him if he does take that pay cut. Then that's what I would kind of compare it to. But okay, so let's just we had a long discussion on the quarterback, so we're gonna let's talk about we talked about Miles Garrett a little bit, so we'll just pass over that. But DK Metcalf traded to the Steelers. That I think is that probably the biggest deal that has
probably,
happened this
probably
offseason?
Gotta
Is
be.
there
so far,
like in
so
terms of
far, I would
like
say.
changing teams? I mean, Gino was a big deal, obviously, but I think in terms of elite player getting an elite contract and moving via a blockbuster type of trade, I think that's probably the big one this offseason. I can't
Yeah.
think of anything that surpasses that. And again, that's me. That's like I said earlier, this has been a really mellow offseason
Yeah,
in terms of free agency. That normally this is something that you look at, if you're to write out a list and rank them, that's one that's like, okay, the fifth biggest move that's happened this offseason is DK. But this year it's the most
like
pivotal
two or
one that we've
three,
seen.
two or one,
Yeah.
one or two.
Yeah, exactly. So um what are y'all's thoughts on DK to the Steelers? And then I guess we already talked about it from the Seahawks point of view, but for the Steelers, what do you guys think this does for that franchise?
I mean, I think it sets the tone for what Pittsburgh is all about now. I mean, hopefully they can finally reach double digits win totals for the first time in like 3 years. Uh, but because they barely squeak into the playoffs every year, or they always have a winning record. But yeah, I really I like the deal. It was kind of like it didn't make sense, probably because of where DK was in Seattle, knowing that Seattle it wasn't the same as what they were back in the early 2010s from 2013 to 2016, 2017 with the Legion of Boom and stuff like that. And then DK comes in, and you're thinking, okay, they're going to be better offensively, and the defense is going to be undershot. Offense is going to overshadow that defense. or the offense. I mean, uh, but I feel like with him moving, with him them making the deal to ship him to Pittsburgh, uh, it's good. I think it's good for Seattle just to start anew, because I could probably tell that DK didn't want to be part of a rebuild, or he didn't want,
Yeah.
and he wanted to be paid $30 million. Like, and I don't think Seattle had that kind of money sitting around, knowing that they were gonna go after a Sam Darnold, probably because
Yeah.
and and also not having to give up a first round pick, I think was huge for Pittsburgh as well, because I think Pittsburgh only gave a second and a third,
Not
or
even, I
was
don't think.
Yeah, it was
Was it
number
even a
it
52.
third?
was it was an even trade.
It was number 52 and number 223. So a second and a seventh this year.
And they got like a 6th round
Yeah.
back too, right?
With
So
DK.
Mhm.
yeah, so it was basically a 2nd rounder, and then you move your 7 up to a 6.
Hmm.
So
And then you paid him
yeah,
30 million a year, which I think
yeah,
the only question now for Pittsburgh is who's throwing him the football.
Yeah.
That's the biggest question you have now. Because
yeah,
Pittsburgh is solid defensively. You got TJ Watt, who's a perennial defensive player of the year candidate every year. Um, and, you know, you got George Pickens, who I think he'll flourish now, not being the
mm,
number one target. I think he'll flourish being the second option,
yeah,
or just not having the pressure of being guarded by the number one guy every game, the number
yeah,
one corner.
Those
He
two
can
are going to be
actually
fun to
have.
watch.
Oh yeah, for sure. The physicality part of it.
Absolutely.
DK is a physical specimen, a freak of nature, who's not going to shy away from blocking downfield.
No.
And George Pickens is probably going to start a fight or two, and DK is going to be right in the middle of it with him. So,
yeah,
but yeah, I think it was a win-win for both. I think it was like a 25-75 for Seattle. Like I don't want to say a win-win for both
yeah. They had a
teams.
reason for it though. That one
Yeah.
was like
Hmm.
it kind of made sense. They just didn't want to pay
It's like Seattle's
30
trying to
million
build
to him,
something
and
up now. Pittsburgh wants to take the next step into winning ball games. Now they
yeah,
just need to address the guy who's going to be spinning the ball to
yeah.
DK. And
With the Steelers, I'm curious though because the whenever you think Steelers, you're like ground and pound, physical,
yeah,
toughness, yada yada yada. Obviously, that's just about as tough as you can get at wide receiver. Him and George Pickens
steel curtain.
are like the
Yeah,
epitome of physicality at that position. But I kind of wonder if they're moving their, especially with Najee Harris leaving now. I kind
yeah,
of
that
wonder if
was.
they're moving their philosophy from physical run game to physical pass game, which is not very common, honestly, in the NFL. You don't see a lot of physical pass games, but I think that could be a thing. But now you just got to figure out who, yeah, like you said, who's going to be throwing it to him. And I don't know. I just can't. Whenever I think of how this offense is now constructed, I just don't know if there's anyone that makes sense for it. And Rogers, so if anyone could get like Rogers under control, it's Mike Tomlin. And when I say if anyone, I literally mean like Mike Tomlin's like the person that could like is the one person I would trust to be able to take care
He
of
ain't
that
gonna take any bullcorn,
personality.
dude.
But it's I still don't like the concept of I still don't think Rogers just fits. He's not a culture fit. And I when I think of how they're building this, I'm thinking of I mean, obviously it's an easy comparison, but I'm thinking of a Roethlisberger type of guy, right? The big physical. I said physical passing game. I'm trying to figure out who's a physical quarterback that can take that over. I'm trying to find my. I mean, I'm trying to find not talent wise, but play style wise. I'm trying to find a Josh Allen. I'm trying to find a uh, Cam Newton type of guy that's going to go and take hits and get back up. But
Such a rare
and I
breed,
just
though. Like
it
there's
is, yeah. And like who I mean, who is there? Like even in the draft, like okay, I'm going to throw a name out there, and I'm not a big fan of him. For some reason, he's gotten a lot of discourse, but he has an injury history that is scary. But Tyler Shuck, he's probably going to be like a fourth rounder. He makes sense because he's that big dude. He's physical. He has a strong arm,
Yeah.
and he has a high ceiling. It's just you don't know if he's going to like go out there and pull an Aaron Rodgers and tear his ACL 2 plays in.
Right.
Uh, but that's just me throwing a name out there, and um, I just don't know how you're gonna get like I think what you're gonna end up doing is you're gonna sign. I feel like what's going to happen is you're going to re-sign Russ, and then you're going to go figure out who you can develop behind him, and uh, and it's going to be a young guy. And Fields was out of their price range. Obviously, he goes and signs 20 million with the Jets
Yeah.
a year. But I wonder if they could be like, uh, I wonder if they call up the Patriots and a name that's gotten a lot of. He's been kind of polarizing, but hey, give me Joe Milton. You know, we'll send you a
Oh,
fifth round draft pick.
yeah.
And
Philly
I
strong.
actually told Alec this last year. I was like, dude, I feel like you guys are like the perfect team to go get Joe Milton because he has a lot of what I think the Steelers would like, and he has a lot of that Big Ben
Yeah.
in him. And uh, yeah, I think he would be a fun one that you throw in there, and odds are against you that that lands, and he's a some type of big time guy. But you're really there's no options here. It's really just like it's like you got to figure it out. I mean, you got to
Yeah.
play with. Yeah, you don't have the options to go and have fun at this position. Your quarterback position is going to be a liability this year again.
Yeah,
So,
like I did I'm gonna keep referencing it just because it was a recent thing I did, but this mock I did yesterday, no trades or anything. So I had the
mhm.
Steelers sitting at 21, and even though he's not like a big guy, I do feel like he's got some toughness to him. I feel like Shadir's not a bad fit there.
Yeah,
Hmm.
He's had to deal with some really bad offensive lines in his college
Hmm.
yeah.
career. He's taken hits.
Yes.
Obviously, there's like a whole. I'm not buying into the personality concerns. I never
I
really
think
did.
I'm gonna cut you off really
Yeah.
quick, and I agree with you because your point. That's why I'm bringing it up. I think Shadir Sanders is not someone that's for everyone. I think he's someone that's like he people will either love him or you hate him personality wise.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And that's how it was with Dion too. When Dion was in
That's
the
true.
Yeah.
NFL, everyone was like, oh, he's a cocky asshole, or he's some or they're like, dude, that guy's so cool. Like I just love talking to him. And that's kind of how I feel like Shadir's gonna be that way.
Yeah.
He's gonna yeah.
I mean, it makes
There's a
sense.
cocky, uh, not a cocky, but like a supreme confidence in how he plays the game.
Yeah. And
That's how I feel
yeah,
like it
that's
is.
a line that you need to kind of it's person to person. Joe Burrow is an example of that, kind of.
Yeah.
Oh my
He's so confident. In my opinion, he's extremely confident. Some people are like
Very.
he's cocky, but in my
Mm-mm.
opinion, it's just he has the highest level of confidence that you can have at the quarterback position. Obviously, that shows up on the field,
Yeah.
but
Like that's the thing is
yeah,
I feel like the line is drawn in if you can back it up or not. Like
yeah,
Exactly.
you look at
exactly. That's the
like
point. Yeah,
Josh Rosen. Like there were 9 mistakes made before
Mhm.
me. It's like and then you'd kind of falter out in the NFL. It's like, okay, that's a cocky guy. But it's like Joe Burrow, that
Yeah,
that guy can back it up. So
exactly. Yeah, I think Shadir because he could either be let and just what we just said. He's either Mike Tomlin's going to sit down with him, and I'm sure they already have probably.
mhm,
Um, but Mike's going to sit down with him, and he's going to love him or he's going to hate him. So either they're all over that, or they're going to be like, nope, I'm not
yeah, I'm
doing
not
it.
gonna touch it with a 10 foot
And
pole.
I'm yeah, exactly. And that's just how it's going to be. It's not going to be something where it's like, oh, well, maybe if the board falls this way, I think it's going to be like you're going to be aggressive towards him
Mhm.
or you're going to be aggressive away from him. And I could see them a team. Uh, Not everyone in the draft community knows this, but when teams construct their board, they will purposefully leave players off their board, and they could be even if like James Pierce is a name in that category, by the way, for this year, a
Mhm.
lot of off the field problems that for some
Hmm.
reason have just now become known for some reason, even though they were something that you can quick Google search, you know this information as of 12 months ago. But James Pierce is a type of guy that And I've actually heard some stories of it that he's not on a number of teams' boards, and that doesn't matter if he's still there in the seventh round. They're not touching it. And so yeah. Long story short, some teams will keep players entirely off their boards, and I think that's an interesting one for the Steelers. I really think that they're either going to be like, oh, this is a top 10 guy on my board, or he's not. I'm not touching him, and that'll be interesting to see. But yeah, we'll see about that. I'm so curious at what the I think currently because we know what the Giants are going to do. We know the Giants are going to go. If it is not a rookie quarterback, we know it's going to probably be Rodgers. Honestly, that's what I would
Mhm.
say. I don't think Russ is
What it
their guy.
seems to be, yeah.
But I think they're going to go all in on the draft. I think you're going to go. I feel like when it's all said and done, they're going to trade up and go try and get Cam. The Titans are a little bit different because worst things worst, you have Will Levis still, so that's not ideal at all. But at least you have a guy that can be a really bad starter instead of someone that's like it's like
Yeah.
you have a practice squatter out there.
And even
Um,
then, with another offseason of training and practice, you never know what he could be. We've seen people make jumps from being awful to
yeah,
decent, at least. So you never know.
yeah. Oh,
But
I
yeah,
will
being
say, and that actually kind of piqued a thought, but if he didn't have the personality concerns, I could actually see the Steelers. We're talking about the Steelers. I could actually see
mm,
the Steelers pursuing him, but that there's no shot that Mike Tomlin has any interest in.
not a
And
big mayonnaise guy.
yeah, he's not. He's probably not a big mayonnaise guy. He likes his ketchup Heinz.
Yeah.
Heinz
So
Field, man. That's it.
um, but
There's
so they must be trading for Mahomes because Mahomes likes ketchup if I recall correctly. So
Yes.
there you go.
uh,
Um,
but yeah, to add on, I mean, yeah, you could see Pittsburgh going after a big physical guy. One guy that came to my mind immediately uh, when you said big and physical. I mean, I looked to the draft. Even if they don't go like round one, there are going to be some guys that could possibly be developmental pieces. One guy immediately that came to my mind, a guy that just, you know, who could possibly develop. I mean, you've got, Riley Leonard coming out of
yeah,
Notre Dame,
that
Will
seems
Howard,
like a Tomlin guy. And
Will
Tomlin
Will
was at
Howard
a
out of Ohio
Tomlin
State
was at the
as well.
Senior Bowl, and Riley Leonard was a Senior Bowl, and
Hmm.
Yeah.
Just
just
those two
just worth
guys.
mentioning because Tomlin likes the Senior Bowl guys. So
Mhm.
Mm.
And those two guys really rung the bell the most for me. Is that big, physical guys
yeah,
who aren't afraid
that's
to
true.
stick their nose in the run game either. Like we saw that with Riley
Yeah,
Leonard in the national championship game. The guy
yeah,
ran, I think, what, four straight plays and was gassed after the very first possession.
yeah. So
Like he was
um,
sucking on an
yeah,
oxygen
they
tank
make
after
they
that.
make sense. Those make sense. Definitely not like long term guys because neither of those guys are going to be. I think those guys are going to be backups, career backups. Honestly,
True.
that can get a spot start, but I could see them being like um, going and pursuing them, and if they really are in a pinch, then maybe in a really depressing world for them starting those guys. But um,
They just need a bridge for Lenore Sellers because man, that's a beautiful
oh,
fit.
Oh,
oh, now that you
100%.
say that,
I
I love
just
that.
clocked that.
That
He's
is,
a. This is his last year of eligibility, right? Or is he
no,
eligible after this
he'll
next
be a
year?
junior this year,
So
so
he can
he'll
so
be
he can
eligible
He'll
after
be
this.
eligible.
yeah.
Oh man, that
Yeah,
would be, yeah. Just
I
if
think
Pittsburgh
Lagway
even
could actually
like,
make some sense too
I
for
was
him.
thinking him too. Just
Yeah,
compact build where he's not afraid
yes,
to yeah.
yeah. I
big
mean,
guy.
that's the prototype. Actually, we were talking. You just said earlier like there's not a lot of those guys. This next draft is going to actually
Mm.
be like, if you
Archie
maybe that's what
Arch
they're
Manning.
hey maybe that's what they're planning for. Maybe they just know they've been okay in the past without going to go get a quarterback.
Yeah,
They've made that very public since Big Ben retired that
Yeah.
they're like, you know what, we can win games without a quarterback. So maybe for the time being, they're just like, okay, let's set it up and we're gonna have our trenches all set up. I think their offensive line is going to start being really freaking good because
Mm.
you get a lot of these guys developed. Fatanu missed the entire year last year,
That's
and
right.
you are finally going to be in a position. Frazier's going to be developed, and it'll be a year since he broke his leg.
Mm.
Uh, and you have oh, I'm forgetting his name, the Georgia
Mason
kid.
McCormick. Oh,
McCormick was good
Oh,
too, but Brett,
Broderick
Roderick
Jones.
Jones,
Yeah.
and
yes.
he'll have another year under his belt. Hopefully, they know where to put him,
Down in
and
Washington.
slot him in, get him comfortable. And he had a little bit of a tough going this past year, but I think they're kind of giving him the Mozzie Smith treatment, like the Cowboys are with Mozzie, where they're just like we're going to will it into existence. You get Troy Fatanu, who I loved coming out of the draft,
Yeah.
and you can continue to build. I think you got four guys there that are like going to be really good starters. So this is honestly, this could actually at the tail end of this in a year you develop this team, you build this team up, and you have the infrastructure to put a quarterback in and really give them a good situation with a great coach who knows how to build confidence and really coach the bad out of you and the good into you. And but yeah, that's a good point. I think Lagway and Sellers would be good fits. But okay, so we're nearing the 56-minute mark, so about an hour. So let's uh now that the free agency is pretty much wrapped up, not pretty much wrapped up, but the big stuff is
Yeah.
wrapped up. And now we're going to the kind of the scraps. And there, like we said earlier, there's still a couple good edge rushers and a couple good receivers. You got Diggs, you got Cup, you got Von Miller. Another sleeper is Dante Fowler, who had 10 and a half sacks this last season. And I think I'm missing a couple more guys, but like Calais Campbell, who's there every single year. Uh, yeah, you have a lot of good older vets there, but for the most part, it's pretty much cleaned up. And with that being said, uh, like we talked about earlier, the kind of point of the free agency period is to build this team up so that you can go to the draft and be able to go get the guys that you really like instead of going to get the guys that you kind of need. You can go get the wants instead of the needs to be able to build the talent on the team. So, with that being said, what are y'all's thoughts on how this free agency cycle impacts how this draft goes down?
You
I
go,
mean,
Mark.
yeah, it really just it sets up a lot of teams to just not be pigeonholed into picking what they quote unquote need, right? I feel like we've seen primarily the draft the past couple of years has not been so much about what your team needs, as opposed to just taking the best guy on the board and taking a guy that you feel confident that you can develop. And I feel like that's a lot of this draft because it's not a good draft if you really need anything,
Yeah.
right? Like quarterback, obviously. If you need a running back, you can get some in the first round if you really want to take that. But definitely later in the draft, tight end is good. Receiver, it's not very top heavy, but it's definitely fleshed out.
Hmm.
Um, Defensive tackle is maybe the best position in the class
Yeah.
overall in
I
terms
agree.
of top talent and depth. And it's like, who really needs to sit there and say, hey, we're going to take this guy. He's a run stuffing defensive tackle with not much pass rush upside at the
Hmm.
top of their board. It's just not really going to happen.
Yeah.
So you're going to see a lot of teams just kind of maybe reach a bit just because positional value I don't think is going to be as important as it has been in past classes. It's really going to be an interesting draft. It has been since the beginning of the college football season and the NFL season to now. So it's really just got to kind of wait and see. It's going to be a lot of guys that you're not expecting. Like I've got a sleeper for the late first round, Darian Porter from Iowa State.
Oh yeah.
I think he could go late first.
Hmm.
Guys like Donovan Jackson, Ezeru Waku, Ursary. There's a
Beast.
lot of
Yeah.
guys that you could see slip in, and it's really because of this free agency not having as many cornerstone pieces.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. Pierce, what you're thinking?
I mean, yeah, I mean, Mark pretty much hit it on the head. I mean, just the talk of just, it's not top heavy. It's not as, it's well spaced out in terms of receivers, running backs. I'd say You said the most talented is defense tackle. I agree with that. And then running back, I think, is just the deepest. Like there's so much talent in the running
Yeah,
back room with Genty spearheading that group with Henderson and Genty
Judkins and
or Judkins right there.
and
And then
Hampton,
you've
and
got
yeah,
and then
it's
you've got
all around.
Scatterboo all the way down. I don't
Samson,
know
just
why, but one of my friends says Scatterboo is going to be a fullback in the next couple of years. I'm like, I doubt it, but
he's
uh,
interesting. I could see if he fails, then he could actually be a good fullback.
oh, for
Honestly,
sure, the physicality part.
I don't know. I doubt that, but yeah,
But yeah, I feel like a lot of teams have addressed some needs, and I mean, I'm gonna just go ahead and point to the Cowboys. I mean, getting depth at linebacker and possibly getting your that trade with Buffalo.
Murray.
Yeah,
Oh, Kyrie Elam.
yeah, Elam. I feel like Elam can be your because I feel like I watched a little bit of his tape. He primarily played in the nickel, like he played slot corner.
Last year,
He,
he was playing
I
nickel.
think. I think he played. There was. I think there was one play I saw him play.
Oh,
He lined up. I think
really?
head on with Hopkins against the Chiefs. And I think Hopkins was in the slot. I could be wrong.
Oh,
I don't know. But I wouldn't. I mean, maybe you can teach him, and develop him to be your next slot corner. Knowing that Jordan Lewis just got a bag in Jacksonville, uh, you can, and Eberflus being a linebacker guru, I feel like can develop. Uh, I get his name so messed up so bad. Sobrano, I believe. Uh,
what? Who? So,
uh,
oh, Sanborn.
Sanborn. I get his name wrong all the time now, but I feel like he can develop him more into
Yeah,
uh, a better starting caliber middle linebacker. I feel like he can develop Murray, Kenneth Murray, to be
Forgot
more
about
of the
that.
off ball. He's been playing middle linebacker his entire career from college, from I think high school all the
yeah.
way through now.
It needs to be
But I
playing
think
Will.
exactly slide him over to Will. You can send him on blitzes because he's fast. He's fast enough to where he could get to the quarterback, and he's
Yeah,
fast enough to make plays. I could definitely see them developing him to play off the ball to where you can have him and I never having those two on the field at the same time, and
Overshown.
and then
Yeah,
Overshown when he gets healthy. I mean, that's just terrifying.
yeah.
That's a
He should
terrifying
play. He needs to
linebacker
play
core.
the Overshown role while Overshown's hurt.
Yes, and
Uh,
then
yeah.
I mean, you have your secondary pretty much set. I would say until Diggs comes back from his
Nickel.
knee
Yeah,
injury.
you still need the nickel though.
Nickel is what you need
Yeah,
the most. Yes, but I mean, there's so many things Dallas could do in this draft. They could
yeah,
spin a wheel and they could say, "Oh yeah, we can add something
yeah,
onto that position." Like one thing that if it happens, I mean, if you want to take the best player available in a lot of I mean, Dylan, we did a mock with you, me, you, and Ayush. Uh,
I
Malachi
think I go
Starks, I think, was picked
with
at
him.
like
Mm,
Malachi Starks. I'd say he's the best safety in the draft class.
yeah,
We had him mocked at like
yeah. It was like
late
late
in the
first. Yeah,
first, and I'm saying if he's there available at 12, and
yeah.
you have
Maybe.
opportunities. I mean,
Yeah. The problem with him is he had a bad. He's a great player in my opinion, but he had a bad year last year.
yes,
Not a bad year. An underperforming
subpar
year.
to what he
But
did his last
I
2 years.
like the name throughout though because we're talking about nickel. He played a lot of nickel. He was like
Hmm.
a deep zone nickel type of guy.
Hmm.
So I wonder if he would fit into that type of role. Who was the nickel for Chicago last year? Because I'm just trying to make the
Ooh, ooh, ooh.
Eberflus connection here. Um, was it?
Wish I had my computer with me.
Was it
I
Kyler
know
Gordon? Did he play
Kyler.
in nickel?
I think
Yeah. Well, hang on one second.
It was
So
either him or Stevenson.
I think it was no. I was think it was Kyler because I think Stevenson was a boundary. But uh, the reason why I bring that up is because I know they have big corners. They have the big
Yeah.
6 foot plus guys, and yeah, Kyler's 6 foot 200 pounds. So he was a big that was a big nickel, and so maybe that plays into Jordan Lewis leaving because Jordan Lewis was exactly what you think of a nickel. You think of a small guy, but I that's actually a good poll there because I could see them going Malachi Starks, falling in love with the character because he's one of the high character guys in this class. And then you get a 6'2" guy that can play a hybrid safety nickel role, which makes sense for Eberflus. So,
Hmm.
um,
And I mean,
yeah,
just to add on, I mean, just a little bit more. I don't want to take up too much more time, but just other teams, going to Vegas. I mean, I touched on it a little bit at the beginning. Uh, you know, you're now with Vegas trading for Gino. Yes, you have the receiver room that you have to address. You have your tight end. You have Brock
yeah,
Bowers. You have your guys set. Now it's time to, your offensive line has shown flashes, I think, like of being okay, just enough, right now. Uh, you could definitely go after a Marshawn Lynch hybrid, like a Ashton Genty at pick six, which seems more likely now that I'm thinking about it, and that I've been after you
yeah,
brought it up earlier. I was like, man, it just seems more likely that Genty might be the pick, or if they want, a bigger tall, because I mean Genty's 5'9",
Five
almost
eight.
5'8".
He was
Yeah,
5'8"
yeah.
at the combine.
yeah,
He's a
he's
little boy, but
he's a little
he's
smaller.
thick though. He's got
Yes,
yeah,
and
he's thick. He's got a BBL, but
yeah. Come on, man. uh, but yeah, I could see them also, like, they could be like, okay, let's go receiver at six, because the running back room is so deep. You can get your Jedkins or your Henderson, and uh, Dylan, you and I were talking about it last night. Uh, a guy, if Dallas does decide not to go running back round one at pick 12, and they address wide receiver, tackle, guard, defensive end, whatever they, or safety or corner. Um, you said it. You have him compared to a Tony Pollard. I mean, Trevor
oh yeah,
Henderson would be
yeah. Mhm.
perfect for, I think, for the Cowboys to be the home run hitter. If
Oh
he,
yeah.
gets into the
Dude,
secondary.
I would love Trey in Dallas. And you add on to adding on to the fact that he's a scheme fit with Javante, uh,
Hmm.
because Javante can, take your interior snaps, gap
Physical,
runner,
physical, physical.
physical break tackles, and then Trey can be your home run hitter. But Trey's also a great dude, and Javante is
Hmm.
also a good dude too. So you kind of build a high character type of, uh, literally pretty much all the way around. You get, you have a high character quarterback, running back room, uh, uh, receive just a very high character team in general, and I think that's what you want to try and build whenever you have a young, young, well, not young, but freshman type of head coach. So, um, anyways, so I guess we're kind of getting to the end here, but continuing on the topic of what this does for the draft. Uh, I don't know. I honestly don't know if this does a ton to impact the draft, generally speaking. And obviously, or this particular year, uh, obviously, you brought up Pierce. I think you brought up the Raiders. Now they don't have to go force a quarterback because my mock 1.0, uh, which is 2 months outdated now, but I
Hmm.
was at the point where I was like, okay, this sucks, and I'm not a Milrow fan myself, but I was thinking at that point maybe some teams start to be like, okay, he's athletic, he's big, let's reach on him, and we've seen that happen before. And I was like, okay, Milrow maybe fits that mold, and which I was like, dude, if they did this, and I'm a Raiders. If I was a Raiders fan, I would actually throw a fit, but it
Hmm.
kind of just made sense. But now they don't need to worry about that. Well, I mean, in my opinion, they should. In any other year, if they actually had a decent quarterback class here, they should. It should be near the top of their needs. But since this is a poor class, you don't need to worry about it because even though Gino is on a 1 year. I think he has 1 year left of his contract, but even still, he's just not a you have other needs to fill, and then you can worry about that quarterback when that contract actually expires. So, but I think another good team to kind of focus on in the draft aspect is the 49ers. The 49ers lost so many
Hmm.
pieces. a team that I was once sold that they would be in the potentially in the offensive lineman market. I think that they're in the everything but quarterback market probably
Yeah,
because now
pretty
you need a
much.
wide receiver. Well, you still have Pearsall and Jawan Jennings, so maybe you don't need a wide receiver round one, but uh, you still need to build the offensive line. Now you need to go get defensive line, especially along the interior. You need to go get linebackers because Greenlaw left. You need to work on the cornerback room because Travarius Ward left. You need to work on the safety room because Telefona Afunga left. You lost that's even the tackle. Mm,
Hargrave.
Yeah, they cut
Hargrave, you
Hargrave.
lost Javon Hargrave. You lost Leonard
Malik
Floyd.
Collins, right? Didn't Malik
Lost Malik
Collins also?
Collins.
Malik Collins
You
too.
just they just lost so well, you if
Good
you add
lord,
this all up, I think you
God,
lost like 7 or 8 starters. And
yeah,
like
that
not even
sounds like
just starters. Some of these guys are plus starters. Like Ward, that's a plus starter. Hafunga, plus starter. Greenlaw, plus starter. You Hargrave, plus starter. Leonard Floyd, that's a guy that you can rely on 8 sacks every year. Um, it's just down the board, just detrimental losses. Obviously Debo too, but
Those
um
compensatory picks are gonna hit like crack
oh
next
dude,
year.
they're
oh,
gonna get so many compensate dude, they're gonna get like 5 or 6 and a couple of them are gonna be third rounders and oh hey, I'll tell you what, Pierce, we're gonna get some good compensatory picks next year. We'll get a couple of fours. We'll get a
goody.
4 for sure for D Law. Maybe I don't think we'll get a 3 for him. I don't know how that's all added up. I know there's a financial bracket, and then there's a age bracket, and then there's uh, I don't even know
Production.
what they do. Maybe there's just so many stuff, but that's above my pay grade. Um,
Speaking of which, uh,
yeah.
I mean, you brought up Tank. I don't. This is just something that I saw, you know, right before I got on. Uh, he
Oh,
had
the
his
Super Bowl thing.
yeah. That
Yeah.
it rubbed me the wrong way. I was
No,
like,
I know what you
man,
said.
really? And then, but I ended up texting my friend. It's like, okay, he finally realized that he's sick of Jerry Jones' bull crap that he's been trying to sell.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
is it is that far fetched? I don't think so, because Jerry's been trying to do it on his own since freaking
Yeah.
1994.
Yep. All right. Well, I think that's everything.
I believe so.
Uh, well, I mean, I guess there's a lot we could probably this episode could go on for so long, but
Oh, for sure.
there's so much to talk about. But uh, yeah. Mark, it was great having you on. Hopefully, can get you on uh consistently from here on.
Yeah,
So,
would love to. It was
um,
a great time talking ball with you, gents.
yeah, for
Oops.
sure, and yeah, glad to have the extra insight, and it's a good insight. It's a good football mind, and something that we've kind of building this show is something that we kind of worked on is getting people that really have an interest in growing in the sports industry and kind of not like a hobby, but kind of more of a like we have an end game, we have a goal set on how we can develop and grow in this industry. And that's how it was for offsides too. And, but I think there's kind of a different mindset and you can elevate, what we do, what we talk about, because we actually have an interest. And this is stuff that, when we end the podcast say like we're gonna still be thinking about football and like what's gonna happen. It's almost like a disease because I'm like I'll wake up in the morning and I'm like okay, or the Cowboys third string nickel cornerback and like who signed a $1.15 million contract that he'll never touch the field and it's
Yeah,
but
my
for this
girlfriend's gonna be sick of me talking about
yeah
football. I mean,
yeah
it's
yeah, yeah, it's kind of weird though, because like I'll be with people, and if they're like for work, like at work, if I'm with people that don't really like know ball, like it's so weird because I feel like I'm like cutting out like my personality whenever I have to like shut my mouth and not talk about football because it like
Hmm.
makes it's so important in my life to talk about football. But this is a very healthy platform for that.
Mm.
So, but yeah, again, Mark, glad to have you on. Pierce, as always, glad to have you on. We'll see. So I guess kind of an ending announcement. We're gonna get a collab mock uh, done in the next couple weeks. We kind of got to figure out how we can the timing for that because Ayush is out of country right now, and he's gonna be out of country for a couple weeks. So and so his schedule's different. So like right now, I think it's like middle of the night. I don't know. He's in India right now, so I don't know what the time is right now. But um, so we need to figure out how to align the times right, figure out the cast, and well, I'm trying to see if we can like form the Avengers. Like I'm putting together a team, and get like us three, Ayush, Alec, and a bunch of the people from offsides, and get them on here. And uh, the cool thing about like collab mocks is whenever we sit down and like do a mock, it's I guess it depends on like how you're doing the mock. Like, there's a difference between what would I do and what do I think the teams would do. And if we're trying to get the best like concept of what the teams would do, it does not come from one brain, right? So like whenever I do a mock, it's always like it's fun to do, it's great, but the sucky thing is three or four of these picks are actually going to happen. And but whenever we do a collab mock, it's kind of nice because there's 32 different minds in the NFL. 32 GMs make these picks, and in a collab mock, you can at least get like if we get like four, hopefully like five plus people, then we can have five minds instead of one, and all it takes is they say in the draft community, all it takes is one team to make a big move on a certain player, and that's how these drafts kind of fall. So sometimes someone will think highly of someone and think like, oh, this team probably loves this player, but then the other person's like, no, they probably hate him, and that'll make for an interesting episode. So we'll see when we get around to that. But hopefully that's in the near future. But yeah, and hopefully we can get Alec on pretty soon. Hopefully Ayush can come back soon. But all right, well, I think that's going to pretty much do it for today. Thank you to everyone who listens. And I always forget to say this, but please like and repost our shows. That would be great. That will help us grow our listenership, grow our voice. And worth noting, we a couple episodes back, because I missed these last two episodes, but the last episode when it was Pierce, it was you, me, and Jackson. That episode got over 100 clicks, so we got views. So that was our first time passing 100 views slash listeners. And I think we got like 100 on X, which is typically our biggest um, audience, and then we got a couple dozen from Discord. We are on Discord, we're on YouTube, and then we repost it on Apple and Spotify. And I think between those we got like 120. I haven't done the math, but so yeah, thank you guys for your support. Thank you guys for listening, and we will see you guys next week, hopefully. Nice.
Sweet.